Welcome everybody to the latest RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Wire-to-Wire chat. This is Tim Heaney coming at you live on Wednesday, April 18th. I don't know why I said February. I guess the weather here in New York is a bit colder, so that's why I made me think of February. Apologies for a little bit of the delayed time today. I had a appointment that ran a little bit late, so I had to kind of take care of that first. But thank you for coming in and stopping by with me here today. Let's talk about fantasy baseball world when we've actually luckily been available to play baseball with all the weather problems we've been having across the country in the Midwest and in the East, on the East Coast as well. I want to talk about some of the things that happened last night, including a big game from an Arizona Diamondbacks pitcher. Not one you were probably thinking of having those types of games coming into the season, but one nonetheless that's making a lot of people sorry they didn't draft him. We also got a couple of closer issues to talk about for a couple of teams. You know, those are always fun to have to go through here. Also wanted to dive into some of the early hard contact leaders and whether or not those statistics are actually mattering at this point in small sample size terms. Also, another big breakout pitcher is going to have a little bit of a blister issue for a little bit, so should be probably a big topic to talk about as well there. But I want to thank you for joining us today. If you haven't checked out our website yet, it's rotowire.com. You can check out all the MLB stuff at /baseball. If you haven't tried our website yet, if you're not a member, you can go for sign up for a free 10-day trial there, rotowire.com/free. You can check out all of our features, most of our features for about 10 days. It includes the DFS tools, that includes the feature articles, that includes the news, not necessarily the fantasy tips, but that includes the news feed as a part of that trial. So you get to try most of that stuff there as well. You can listen to all of our podcasts for free on Megaphone and iTunes. We have MP3s to download as well. I'm on Tuesdays with Derek Van Riper talking fantasy baseball. We had special guest and a friend of the podcast, Ian Kahn, on the show yesterday. If you don't know him, he's been an actor for a long time, lives in New York City. It was General Washington and AMC's Turn, Washington Spies. Great show if you haven't checked it out yet. All 4 seasons. Completed show is on Netflix, so you can check out that. And he's a great fantasy baseball player too as well. We play in a couple leagues together here in New York, so definitely worth listening, checking that out for sure. I'm on every Tuesday with DVR, so you can check that out if you want to get a little bit more of an audio format of what's going on here. So all right, let's just dive into the news after that now. Patrick Corbin is the Diamondbacks ace I was talking about at the top of the show here. Enjoyed a fantastic outing on Tuesday night against the Giants. Maybe not the hardest opponent ever to go with that, but a complete game, 1-hit shutout, 8 strikeouts, 1 walk. That's something worth talking about either way. He had just he had a little bit of a stumble against the Giants in his last start against them on April 10th, gave up 3 runs on 5 1/3 innings. But when you look deeper into the numbers, even though his 165 ERA so far has been fantastic with his 2 deep into the game shutout performances, when you look at 37 strikeouts to 5 walks in 4 starts, that's pretty unreal there. When we talked about the guys that the Diamondbacks pitchers that were going to benefit from the from the humidor that came into play in Chase Field this year, Corbin was probably one of them. He's probably the afterthought of all of them. Zach Greinke, Robbie Ray, Taijuan Walker, those are the guys that I guess more people were talking about at this point. So, I think that the case there is that, he was kind of the one that was very underrated here. So hang on one second. Sorry. Okay, so sorry about that. I had to get a message to deal with here. So Patrick Corbin definitely is a guy that you have to kind of, look at what he's doing so far and make sure he's not, make sure he's not the same pitcher that he was early last year. The second half last year, he was showing signs of things here that was, he was kind of getting his stuff back. His slider was working right. The control was coming back. This year's been in a heck of a, heck of a continuation of those changes he made last year. So that's the thing where I'm looking at this as a new Patrick Corbin here. The breaking pitches have looked a lot better. The slider is definitely something I want to, recognize as a big part of his game now. Ground ball rate has been above 50% each of the last 3 years. Since the Tommy John surgery's kind of come back pretty gradually in that department. So yeah, it's a new Corbin we're looking at here. It's not. I think there's a lot that has changed about his game that we need to look into here. The velocity is the same. He's throwing the curveball a lot more so far as the initial pitch types have read here. 10.3% according to Fangraphs he's using his curveball. His four-seam fastball, not as big a part of his game early on this year, which I think is going to be for the betterment of his skill set here. He still does a great changeup, good slider. That sinker has been working. That's 4 or 5 pitches depending on what you want to call the slider and curveball. Maybe there's some carryover between those two pitches depending on how the pitch info or Statcast read those things. So very much looking like he's a more dominant pitcher in the strike zone. 17.9 swinging strike percentage so far in his 4 starts. Say what you want about small sample size, that's pretty damn good small sample size number. And the fact that he's getting back to the ways of pitching first pitch strikes now, he's at 69% over the first 4 games. Very good. Like anything above 63 is really good. You want to have a kind of hover around 60 as an average, but anything much above that is much better. So will this come down a little bit? Yeah, a little bit. He's not going to have a 165 ERA the whole year. And maybe if you want to sell him for the expectation that his BABIP might bounce a little bit more toward negative, and his strand rate is 86.4%. Yeah, sure, those will kick back a little bit. He's not going to have anything like that for a whole year, and if he does, it'll be very unexpected. So, yeah, you can buy high on Corbin though. Even if he has that mid-3s ERA the rest of the way, that's still very good. It's still a reliable top 20 type of starting pitcher for the rest of the season. The price is never going to be higher than it is now, so that's the one reason I wouldn't necessarily buy. Wouldn't be all over that, but there's since the second half of last year, he's had a heck of a run, and it's a lot of reality to what's going on here with him. So, yeah, the buying high concept is kind of becoming a little more accepted as the fantasy sports industry gets smarter, as readers get more informed about things. When you have to buy high and it makes sense and there's a foundation for it, like there was with Patrick Corbin, I think you can do it. He's had these elite seasons before. 2015 was a great one. 2013, a little bit less, but the controls was great at that point. So, yeah, Corbin is the type of guy that you can believe in even if you buy a little bit high. Now, would I go trading Clayton Kershaw or another big name for him? No, but if you're trading if you have a lot of hitting to give and you want to give away a big bat for him, I wouldn't be objected to that. NL only leagues, probably the price will be even higher, which is a little bit more. There's a little bit more risk the deeper you go into fantasy leagues, where trading for a pitcher that could have negative regression the rest of the way, it's always going to be a little bit more of a risk because it's going to be more difficult to find replacement value for what he's doing if he does mess up. So the shallower the league, though, the more willing I am to take that chance. And this guy could wind up as a top 10 pitcher. I would more safely say top 20. With a little bit of a dip in production, the pace slows down a little bit. But Patrick Corbin, I think, is basically the real deal. If you can have that expectation of like I said, a 3.5 ERA the rest of the season, maybe a little bit more on the walks side, maybe 2.5 per 9 or 3 per 9. But the strikeout ability looks like it's kind of peaking right now. And if he figured out his arsenal, then yeah, I believe it. All right, a little bit more closer trouble to talk about here. Got a couple of teams here that have a little bit of a questionable arrangement here. So talk about Kenley Jansen being one of them. He blew the save last night. He's had trouble with his velocity coming out of spring training, and there's concerns that his pitch mechanics weren't right. Blew his second save of the season on Tuesday. He gave up 2 runs on 2 hits and a walk while striking out 2 over an inning. Velocity was back up to 92, 93 miles per hour on the cutter, but one of them was hit for a home run at 89 miles an hour. 2 out of 4 blown save chances when I think he maybe blew 1 last year. It was a very low amount. So no reports of an injury so far. Jansen, kind of asserting that it might be a mechanics thing. It might be just an approach thing with his delivery. Am I worried about this? Mildly. We kind of had the little bit of a panic early in the season. I said pick up Josh Fields. I still think Josh Fields is the handcuff here that would have to back him up in this situation, because Fields has kind of come back on as a reliever the last couple of years. He's had that overpowering stuff. Jansen he has 7 strikeouts in 6 and 2/3 innings. That's pretty good. The walks are at 3. That's not good. And the home runs, he has 3 home runs already. Gave up 5 all of last year and gave up 4 the year before. Not a guy who gives up a lot of homers. And of course, with relievers, you can have the small sample bad luck of giving up a lot of home runs if you keep missing. So if you own Jansen, you probably want to pick up Fields. I don't own him anywhere, but I would still do the same thing. I would even still probably give a try on Josh Fields as that, the dart throw you can make for saves right now. So I think that I'm not overly like smashing the panic button, but I'm like, all right, I want to see how this plays out in his next start. And I do want to pick up Josh Fields in the meantime while this is happening. So I think that, Jansen being the skill that he is and the Dodgers being the good team that they are eventually going to come back around. I think here he'll get those save chances, and his replacement is going to be someone pretty busy. So Jansen and Fields, that's your handcuff for this one. The Cardinals, Bud Norris looks like he's at least taking over in the interim for Greg Holland, who looks like he's still kind of going through his spring training stuff here. Now, the notion is that because they paid him a $14 million one-year contract heading into this year, and not even heading into this year, the day opening day, the day the season started, they signed Holland to this deal. That people the assumption is that he's going to close eventually when he gets his leggings under him. I know Bud Norris was bad in the second half last year, but that first half was dynamite, and his dominance since he changed from a starter to a reliever has been noticeable, and he thrives in the role. He topped out at, I believe, 96 miles an hour on the pitch that ended last night's game when he pitched 1 2/3 innings. The cleanup Greg Holland's setup mess, actually, and Tyler Lyons helped in there as well. But I think Norris might have a month's worth or a couple of weeks worth of save chances here. He looks like he's pitching the part of a closer. He does have that mow down stuff. Now that he can do it in short sample sizes as a reliever, go max effort. He does have that starter's arsenal where he can still throw 3 or 4 pitches if he really had to. So I actually own Bud Norris in a lot of places. I'm kind of happy I am right now, because I think the Cardinals, they're going to stick with what works. They're not going to. I hope Mike Matheny doesn't just feel obligated to go back to Greg Holland because they paid him the money. If Bud Norris is working, why change that? If you own both of them, it's great in a fantasy league. If you have a piece of both of them. Norris can get you a couple more weeks at least. If he has like 1 or 2 blowups, I think it's done. I think they will kind of force Holland back in there. But I don't know. I think this is a Bud Norris that we can get behind a little more than usual than we originally thought. So, Luke Gregerson's going to stay in a setup role. I wouldn't worry about that. Dominic Leone's going to be that bridge type of reliever, the pitch like the 5th and 6th and 7th innings. So, yeah, I think this is Bud Norris's gig for a little bit. And if you can squeeze like 5 or 10 saves out of him in the meantime, that's a win. That's a fantasy victory. If you can get, about a third of the season total of someone who would be a number 1 closer out of Norris, at minimum, that works. And I think he has the potential to do more. Greg Holland, he had his own little second half collapse last year. Concerns about his velocity and location. He's always had walk problems. And Norris has the velocity working for it right now, and he looks like the more effective pitcher. So the Cardinals probably are going to give Norris a little bit longer than we all thought originally. So I'm quite happy about that, and I hope some of you got a piece of him as well, because I think he'll have at least another few weeks of save chances here. So now you have a couple of multi-inning ace relievers that are picking up saves as well here in the Astros, Chris Devenski, and the Brewers, Josh Hader. Devenski for the Astros, he was kind of thought of as just as the guy to kind of set up the closer in Ken Giles, that they would have they would just use him as that super reliever that he's been kind of entrenched in the last couple of years. But he has at least 2 saves, if not 3 on the year already. He had his closeout last night. Ken Giles is not the sole closer in this Astros bullpen. I think it's going to be a committee at this point. They kind of dropped that hint early in the season, and they're really paying off on that factor. Is Giles worth cutting? No. I do think that he'll work his way back into at least semi-frequent save chances, if not the actual role. And Devenski's in real life, he's more valuable as the guy that can get those tough outs. But Devenski can usually go 2 innings, and they might take the Raisel Iglesias role with him here. Have him eat those 2 innings at the back end. Have Giles or something warming if he gets in trouble, and let him carry it out if he wants to. If they give Devenski more rest this way, that's a good thing. If he pitches 2 innings per day, but then he gets like a day or 2 off in between, that could work. Give you great numbers and sneak a couple of vulture wins out for you and get a lot of saves. That might make him, the Andrew Miller type, top 30 type of overall pitcher if he gets all that work in. So, Devenski, you're happy to own a guy like that with the skills and the role, might be trending more saves here and not just having to rely on those vulture wins and holds in those leagues that actually count them, which there aren't many. Josh Hader of the Brewers, prospect as a starter. Control got away from him a little bit. He got his own 2-inning save out of this, and I think he has multiple occasions of that this year. So certainly the best pitcher in the Brewers bullpen, even with Corey Knebel, the injured Corey Knebel. Hader is still a better pitcher than him because the control is there. Plays up better as a reliever. So, I mean, maybe the Brewers will go in that direction. Maybe they'll kind of buck the trend of having their best reliever be that setup guy in the 7th and 8th, and now, have that 8th and 9th lockdown with him as well. And the fact that he's a lefty and can pitch to everybody else effectively is really good. So, those are 2 guys. Devenski and Hader are guys you want to own anyway, regardless of role in a mixed league, because they help your ratios. They help you get those extra strikeouts during their appearances here and there. I mean, those are just 2 guys that you buy the skills and you want the skills even when they really didn't have that great role. They might add the saves to that role now, which is kind of fantastic. So, I'm happy to have a piece of Devenski in a couple leagues. I don't have Hader. If you have Josh Hader, let me know because, it's a good victory to have at this point in a single year league here. Even if it's not a keeper, it's still good to have a guy like Hader helping your ratios and stuff. So, Shohei Ohtani left last night's game after 2 innings after developing a blister. A blister on his right hand. It limited his velocity and his control early on. He gave up 3 runs on 4 hits and 2 walks in that little brief outing there that kind of brought him back to earth a little bit after his great start to the season. Scheduled to make his next start, not sure yet. He might require a disabled list, it looks like our note says here. I didn't want to be that hater. I was wondering if the change in baseball might affect him a little bit. I mean, we saw a little bit of struggles in the preseason with the location of his splitter and all that kind of, and even Major League Baseball pitchers had trouble adapting to the new baseballs last year. And apparently, rumors says a couple of reports say they might have changed again. So that might be something worth Googling. But the change from the Japanese baseball to the American baseball was something I was a little bit worried about. Mildly, maybe not so much where I was going to say he's going to have a crap year, but maybe just a little bit less willing to go hard in paying full price for him in a draft. So you got to wonder if he's going to miss time with this because, we saw Ohtani miss a lot of location-wise in spring training, which happens a lot in warmer weather and drier weather like he was in Arizona because, the ball doesn't break as well or whatever, or the balls fly out harder off batted. The balls fly out of the stadium harder off bats in Arizona, kind of, because the air's a little drier. So you got to wonder maybe if this adjustment's kind of holding him back a little bit. He had the 2 great starts out of the gate, and then, hopefully this isn't like an Aaron Sanchez or Rich Hill situation where they really need to limit his innings here. They were already kind of doing that with a 6-man rotation. You were kind of willing to deal with it because the skills are so good, but if there's a really way they have to kind of baby him a little bit more with this sort of thing, really have him have like a full 6 or 7 day break or something. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it's a time to buy low if someone's really worried about it, if he goes on the DL, but wait and see on it and, see if he can actually bounce back and start in the next couple of days here. Okay. So I'm looking to see if anybody has a question. No questions so far. So what I want to do now is kind of look at some of the leaders in hard contact among hitters. This data is not really available yet for Baseball Savant. The Statcast website that MLB.com runs, Mike Petrello and then they Darren Willman do such a great job with that stuff over there. Fangraphs has a couple more things readily available, so I wanted to just kind of take a look at the way those ratings come out, the hard contact. You know, these are not going to be exactly correlating with the StatCast, I think. But I do want to take a look at some of these guys early on that are doing well or not really squaring up the ball at all. So first, leader doesn't surprise me at all. The leader so far is JD Martinez with 63.4% hard contact. Has the 342 BABIP to match. That's not a surprise. You expected him to be among the leaders whenever he was active. He was one of the big guys last year in those categories. He was the guy that, just scalded the ball whenever he could. Hard contact, StatCast, barrel rate, amazing. So nothing much has changed there. Excuse me. Second so far is Yoan Moncada of the White Sox. That's pretty interesting development there because his contact has not been frequent, and that's a problem for him. He's a strikeout, walk, home run type of guy when it comes to that sort of thing. But the 55.2 hard contact percent early on, 385 BABIP, that matches up pretty well. Moncada's a guy that's probably going to keep a lot of high BABIPs because of that. Maybe not 385, but above average, like a 350 or something like that here. That's something that you can kind of count on as he grows into a major league role. He's going to have that ability to really connect strongly with the ball, and he's a fast guy. So he, BABIP kind of doesn't always trend this way, but it often trends in a higher BABIP for faster players because they can beat out infield singles and stuff like that. That's always good. Nick Castellanos for the Tigers is third with 53.5%. Now, we got reports last year that the batted ball statistics were a little bit wonky for Comerica Park because I think where they registered the ball coming off the bat was a little bit different. There was something with the angle of the reading was not great. Was different from the other StatCast posts, I believe. So I'm wary of trusting that, but and especially when you see Victor Martinez tied for sixth in that category, might lend some credence that the Tigers' numbers might be a little bit inflated, but I don't know. They still kind of register right now. So don't go crazy on the Tigers' numbers if they really look that high. But I want to wait and see if there's any more analysis on if that's actually gonna wind up as real information or not. Chris Davis of the Athletics, fourth with 52%. That's that's kind of goes along with his profile as well. But with him, you notice that the BABIP being 289, fly ball rate is 46%. High fly ball is usually going to lead to lower BABIP and lower batting average potential, of course. But Davis is a guy that can buck that trend because he does hit the ball so hard regardless. So Mookie Betts, number 5, 51% hard contact, 364 BABIP. Nothing much changing there, even though he has a 53.1% fly ball rate. But he's a guy that's easily capable of keeping a BABIP high and batting average potential being elite and stuff like that. Matt Davidson is 6th with 50%. Another guy like Moncada, his teammate, not really great with the contact skills, but when he does make contact, he barrels it. Davidson is a 42.3% fly ball hitter, so that's a lot. 190 BABIP, not surprising. But I still think that if you plan for the bad batting average, the home runs will be real. It's going to be a 30 type of homer season for him if he can play. If he can 500 or so plate appearances, that's his best skill that he's going to offer you. So if you can stomach a 240 batting average, probably the rest of the way, that's pretty good. I think that the hard contact helps him there, even when he does strike out so much that'll actually kind of keep him afloat a little bit here. They got Mike Moustakas tied with Davidson and Victor Martinez with the 50% hard contact rate, 375 BABIP. Another heavy fly ball hitter though, so the batting average is not going to climb much higher above 260 without much help. Matt Chapman, 49% at number 9. Chapman's a guy that's kind of come into his own a little bit now. Very much similar to Matt Davidson's skills. Clearer role because of his defense is his defense is elite at third base, so that's going to keep him in the lineup much more often than Davidson, especially in the field. But Chapman, another type of guy that I think there's a little bit more batting average reality with him upside, I guess, than Davidson. So, Matt Chapman has just kind of proven that he's a fun real life baseball player to watch, and I think his fantasy credit is going up a little bit now too. And number 10 is an interesting one I want to point out because It's Giancarlo Stanton, 48.7%. BABIP 294. Fly ball rate's actually down a little bit for Stanton. He's getting a lot of ground balls going right now. 48.6% on the ground as opposed to 32.4% in the air. So the thing with that, everyone's talking about the strikeout struggles with Stanton here. Something that you want to, typically be careful of normally, but people kind of panicking about that. We talked about it on the podcast a little bit yesterday about, I'm not sure what people expected out of his batting average, because I think the 280, whatever he hit last year, that was a little bit inflated. I think that, rational expectations 250 or 260. I think the adjustment to the American League and the adjustment to playing in the Bronx in such a media hub for baseball, it's getting to him a little bit. Do I think it's going to cause him to bust out to be a bust for the entire year? No, I think that this April is an adjustment period because he's facing new pitchers. He's facing colder weather in April. You can say what you want about that. And a big-bodied guy like he is, he might feel that a bit more than other people because he can't move as freely. He's probably stiffens up a little bit more. So I would buy low if you still can. I'm not sure how big that window is going to be because, any day you can break out with another 2-homer game. But I'm not worried about Stanton. You shouldn't be either because I think it's just a little bit of a small sample size for him to really not – this is betraying his skill set a little too much for my liking, that I think that people are saying, oh, it's – he's really just kind of flaming out right now. So – see if you can buy low on him if you can. And I guess as a major overall point to all this, is it too early to be talking about this stuff? Maybe. I think it's good to look at it in case you do find some of these higher BABIPs early in the season. If they're kind of creeping towards 400, like Yasmani Grandal, for instance, of the Dodgers is 12th in hard contact with 47.4%, tied with Yadier Molina, another fast starter here. I think it's a useful tool to look at this early, even to correlate how justified their success is early on. If they're just scalding the baseball and finding holes with a high BABIP, it's going to happen that way. If you build in some aggression for the negative direction the rest of the season, but they still keep their barrel rates high, their hard contact, I think that's something that's going to do them well over the season. Now, I believe the change means more for people that have changed things about themselves. Matt Davidson worked on his swing a bit here. Grandal was working on it a little bit in the offseason, getting that launch angle, trying to get that right. V-Mart was kind of looked a little bit healthier heading into the year. Makata was kind of one of those guys that was a breakout candidate, so to see him more comfortable is encouraging. And you want to look at the flip side of that and say the lower hard contact rates are a little bit worrisome. Billy Hamilton, not a great hard contact guy to begin with, but 2.9%. D. Gordon, 9.4. Those are your two lowest qualifying players in terms of hard contact. Jose Iglesias, not surprising. Jose Peraza, somewhat surprising. You buy him for the steals, not for all the other stuff. There's a little concern I have about Andrew Benintendi on that. He actually has the 5th lowest hard contact rate among regulars, 16.3%. A lot of ground balls, 53.1%. You got to wonder maybe he's hitting into the shift a little bit too much. That's someone I would probably buy a low on as well because I think there's a little bit more left in his bat than that. The skills are the contact skills, then that stuff's good. Like Lewis Brinson, Eduardo Nunez, Lenis Martin are all, lower end hard contact guys. Chris Taylor's a little bit what I'm worried about. He has a 20.4. That's only 11th overall, 11th lowest overall. So, big breakout guy last year. He retooled his swing last year. You got to figure some of that was going to come back this year a little bit. I don't, you don't think that he was going to have the same success because, there'll be a book on him now how to scout, how to pitch him. So if you factor that in and got him at a discount, I'm not too worried about it. But if you paid a heavy price for him and you're expecting a little bit more than if you're expecting last year's pace for him, that's you're kind of in trouble right now. So that's one thing I'm a little bit worried about there. So I guess long story short, too long don't listen. Hard contact matters to some people at this point if you can kind of piece it together with other pieces of their skill set at this point. But they're going to go on streaks that this turns around, and as you get like another couple weeks and definitely an extra month into the sample, and in the next couple of weeks is when you really start analyzing whether you think fantasy guys are going to be failures or whatnot for the rest of the year. I think it's safe to say that if you keep the context right, hard contact and soft contact percentages matter. Use it as a piece to you analyzing a player. If they're injured, maybe they'll have a soft contact rate. If they've changed something about their swing, they'll have a hard contact, or if they're just kind of performing normally. So use it as a piece of the puzzle. Don't say that it's going to determine everything on its own here. So I think that's going to wrap it up for today. I do want to thank everybody who took a little bit of a viewing here. I noticed there's no questions. Hope that we can have questions every week moving forward. I want to try to do this on Wednesdays still at 2 or 3 p.m. Still trying to work that out, but I want to have a set time for that. And let me know if you guys have a set time for that sort of thing. So you can always drop us questions on the Twitter feed at RotoWire. You can always ask me at Tim_Heaney on Facebook. Sorry, on Twitter. On Facebook, our page is RotoWire as well. We're still offering that free trial for if anybody hasn't subscribed yet. Go to rotowire.com/free. You can try out all of our features for 10 days. No credit card required. We'll only ask you for a card if you're going to wind up subscribing. You do get the waiver wire report every week on Sundays. You get the MLB barometer column from Derek Van Riper. You get a lot of great prospecting report from James Anderson. You get, our DFS articles. You get our DFS tools. The lineup optimizer, which kind of helps you build the best lineup in each, DraftKings, FanDuel, all that stuff. Our MLB daily lineup page. We do it faster than most websites. We do faster than most daily fantasy websites. We sometimes even beat MLB.com and that sort of thing. So definitely worth following that as you go along. Our MLB DFS stats page is bigger than ever. We have this page called Player Trend Report. It's something like, how valuable is it for a player to bat high in the order when you're making a DFS lineup, that sort of thing, and how many points is that going to lead to down the road. We have MLB DFS batter versus pitcher for those of you who overvalue it. Don't overvalue it, but if there's a case where a guy has like 3 homers and 6 at bats off somebody, that's something worth considering as a piece of the puzzle, as a lower piece of a DFS puzzle. And then we have the closer grid, which I just talked about. Very important. There were 4 situations I was talking about there. We have that updated every day on the website to kind of make you set in that facet there. So, again, you can catch me every Tuesday on the Fantasy Baseball Podcast with Derek Van Riper. You can catch me on Twitter at Tim_Heaney, and hope to see you guys next week in this chat room, because I do want to kind of see what everybody's asking, who the players that everybody wants to consider dropping. So hope we can help you out more in the coming weeks. Thanks for joining.